Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Death toll rises to 58 in Baghdad church attack. Al-Qaeda man gave tip-off on Yemen cargo bombs. And Iran accuses the U.S. of stepping up rhetoric against its regime and Syria's. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
The Iraqi Deputy Minister of the Interior said that 52 people were killed and 67 were wounded in the operation to rescue hostages held by armed men in a Baghdad church yesterday. He said that the figures above included only hostages and policemen, not the gunmen.
The Islamic State of Iraq group claimed responsibility for the attack and demanded that al-Qaeda prisoners in Iraq be released. The group also gave a Coptic church in Egypt 48 hours to release the Muslim women whom it said are sequestered in the Egyptian church's monastery.
The operation to rescue hostages at Our Lady of Salvation Church in Baghdad paid a high price. About 120 people were killed and injured.
تقول رواية السلطات العراقية إن 8 أو 9 من المسلحين.
The Iraqi authorities said 8 or 9 gunmen attacked the guards at the gate of the Baghdad stock market adjacent to the church, then set off a car bomb before they stormed the church.
يقتحم الكنيسة بينما يقول أحد الناجين إن المهاجمين كانوا 9 وإنهم كانوا يرتدون.
The survivors said that there were 9 attackers wearing military uniforms. While Iraqi police forces were storming the church and clashing with the gunmen, the U.S. military was monitoring the operation through helicopter cameras.
يراقبون العملية عبر كاميرات مروحيات ليقولوا بعدها إن 3 من المهاجمين.
The U.S. military said later that 3 attackers detonated explosives tied to their belts when the police stormed the church. The hostage rescue operation has ended, but the controversy surrounding it continues. Despite the many lives that the operation cost, the Iraqi government considered it a success for security institutions.
اعتبرتها نجاحا يحسب لأجهزتها الأمنية.
تم تنفيذ العملية بنجاح تام.
The operation was executed with complete success. All the terrorists were killed. We also arrested the suspects.
مشتبه بهم.
يعيد الهجوم على الكنيسة تساؤلات طالما طرحت مع كل عملية نوعية.
The attack on the church leads to the frequently asked question about the Iraqi forces' capability to carry out their security missions and the extent of the connection between security and political failures. The church is located in the Qaeda neighborhood near the Green Zone in central Baghdad. This area of the city is heavily protected by Iraqi security due to its significance. A number of organizations and political parties have their headquarters here. Therefore, more questions are being asked about the security forces' failure to at least prevent the gunmen wearing explosive belts and carrying machine guns from storming the church, which is supposed to be well protected by security as well.
من اقتحام الكنيسة التي تحظى هي الأخرى بحراسة أمنية.
Was anyone killed in the green zone or anyone from the political parties? Only citizens were killed.
كما أن هذه العملية وما يتوقعه مسؤولون أمنيون عراقيون من
Iraqi security officials expect there to be more attacks targeting the Muqtada neighborhood in the next few days. This makes the security issue a card for the political parties to play in their fight over the formation of the government. It has been about 8 months since the elections in March, and the government has still yet to be formed.
التي جرت في آذار مارس الماضي.
Joining us from Baghdad is Dr. Ahmed Rashidi Abdullah, director of the Iraqi Special Institute for Political Studies.
بداية العنف الذي يستهدف الكنائس ودور العباد ليس فقط الكنائس.
Doctor, first of all, violence targeting the churches and other houses of worship is not a new thing. But how do you see the nature of this attack on the church in Qaeda?
الكنيسة في الكرادة هذه المرة.
First of all, this is another day in the life of the Iraqi people that presents their 3 major sufferings: the political failure, the security failure, and the failure to solve crises. The responsibility for the security failure, if we can call it that, falls on the federal government, currently under Maliki's authority in cooperation with US forces. They did successfully free the hostages if we don't mind that they are dead hostages. This was a top-level security failure. The second point is the political failure. Is this problem really about security, or is it actually political? On one hand, getting a handle on the political issues could solve the security problems. On the other hand, the outgoing Iraqi government has not been successful in dealing with the crises and finding ways to solve them.
لكن دكتور، ما هو الفكر وراءها؟ إذا ما قرأنا فيها فكرا معينا، ما هو الفكر وراءها وخاصة
Doctor, what are your thoughts on the gunman's demand to free the Muslim women kept in the Egyptian church?
الإفراج عن مسلمات معتقلات كما وصفنا في أديرة مسيحية في مصر.
Is there a connection between what's happening in Iraq and in Egypt?
في العراق بما يجري في مصر.
يعني هو ابتداء قد تكون هذه المطالب غريبة بعض الشيء. يعني
My first impression was that these demands appeared to be somewhat strange. According to reports, heavily armed men wearing military uniforms had infiltrated the area of Qaeda. It is one of the most fortified and secure areas in Baghdad, near the Green Zone, which is well protected and organised. To answer the question, they made demands to free the women from the Egyptian church and their prisoners in Iraq. They gave 48 hours to the Coptic Egyptians to release the women from their church. As I said before, the issue will have regional ramifications. The US has vowed to eradicate terror from the world, but this helped bring more terror into Iraq and started spreading it to the rest of the world.
Yemen's National Committee for Civil Aviation Security started to implement new inspection procedures for all cargo leaving from Yemeni airports. This news comes after 2 parcel bombs were found on board a US-bound cargo plane. Meanwhile, Yemeni authorities have conditionally released Hanan Samawi, a Yemeni student who was accused of shipping the 2 parcel bombs. Samawi was released after the director of the cargo company, where the package was dropped off, was unable to identify her.
Realizing the seriousness of the situation and the harm that it could cause the nation, Yemen authorities have stepped up their efforts in the war on terror in light of the foiled plot to mail 2 packages of concealed explosives. Yemen has launched an investigation into the terror plot, initially announcing the arrest of the woman suspected of mailing the 2 parcel bombs, a move human rights organizations have raised questions about.
Yemen has signed a security and political deal with the international community, including the US. This comes within the context of the international war on terror.
وعلى الرغم من تعدد اتجاهاته السياسية بدا الشارع متفقا في موقفه من هذه الحادثة.
Despite its various political orientations, the Yemeni public seems to share the same position regarding this latest plot, saying that Washington is attempting to capitalize on it, especially as the US moves closer to midterm elections. The attempted bomb plot has prompted Yemeni authorities to step up its security measures around the nation's airports. In addition, Yemeni forces have staged checkpoints in major city streets. Yemen announced that the investigation is underway, and it's continuing to question cargo workers at the Sana'a airport. Yemeni authorities said they are questioning local FedEx and UPS employees after closing their offices.
شركتي فيديكس وUPS للبريد السريع بعد أن تم إغلاق مكتبيهما.
نريد أيضا من شركات
We urge all central cargo companies to exercise extreme caution and carefully check each parcel, especially packages containing electronics.
خاصة الإلكترونية.
فصل جديد من فصول القاعدة مع خصومها.
This is a new chapter of hostility between al-Qaeda and its enemies. However, this time the target was not only Yemen, but the entire world, in a new wave of threats against international security and aviation. Abdul Rahman Al-Shumiri, Dubai TV, Sana'a.
تلفزيون دبي صنعاء.
تقدير وشكر أمريكي للجهود التي بذلتها السلطات في دولة الإمارات في إحباط مخطط الطرد
The U.S. has expressed gratitude and praised the United Arab Emirates and its authorities for foiling the parcel bomb, which was hidden on board a plane in Dubai airport. Chief counterterrorism advisor to U.S. President Barack Obama, John Brennan, has called Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, and the Deputy Army Chief of Staff to express the gratitude of the U.S. administration for the skillful and timely action of UAE security officials who helped foil the terrorist plot.
التحقيقات التي أجرتها لإحباط الهجوم الإرهابي. وجون برينان أكد أن بصمات تنظيم القاعدة هي وراء المحاولة الإرهابية.
Brennan further said that the terrorist plot carries the hallmarks of al-Qaeda. He added that all forensic analysis points to the explosive expert who prepared the parcel bombs being the same engineer who prepared the bomb that was going to be used in the foiled Christmas bombing of the flight bound from Amsterdam to Detroit, identifying him as Ibrahim Asiri.
على الرحلة بين أمستردام وديترويت وهو إبراهيم العسيري.
Joining us from Amman is Mr. Hassan Abu Hania, expert on terrorism affairs. Mr. Abu Hania, welcome. Do authorities have any strong evidence that may lead to the arrest of the perpetrator, or is it merely speculation?
Without a doubt, all of the evidence is pointing towards al-Qaeda. The group is most likely responsible for the plot. The technique used in this failed bombing is similar to that used by al-Qaeda in previous attacks, such as the incident of Omar al-Farouk and the attempted bombing of the U.S. aircraft bound from Amsterdam to Detroit. The suspects used the same type of explosive materials in both plots. It's also similar to the attack on Saudi Arabia's Deputy Minister of Interior, Prince Mohammed bin Nayef. Ibrahim Hassan Asiri, one of al-Qaeda's military leaders, is responsible for both failed attacks. Asiri is believed to be the one who prepared the explosives, along with Abu Qasim Raini and Abu Huraira, the military commander of al-Qaeda. The attacks may carry the hallmarks of al-Qaeda, but we can't say for sure that al-Qaeda would send an individual to mail the parcel bombs directly.
هنأ رئيس بعثة الأمم المتحدة إلى كوت ديفوار الناخبين على
The head of the UN mission in the Ivory Coast congratulated voters on the good atmosphere for yesterday's presidential election. The votes have begun to be counted. Constituents hope this election will end political conflict in the country.
This is the moment many people have long waited for, the moment to vote in the Ivory Coast's first presidential election in 8 years. A large number of enthusiastic voters came to this ballot center in the capital of Abidjan to choose their future president. This voter says that he is very proud to vote. This is the first time he has voted. And this young man does not feel any anxiety about the ballot. He says people have grown tired of the 10-year-long political and violent conflicts. Months after bloody clashes between police and opposition supporters, the streets of Abidjan were unusually calm despite the heated competition between the 14 candidates in the election.
يؤكد كل مرشح ثقته في الفوز.
Every candidate has confidence that they have won, but the competition is likely confined to 3 of them: the outgoing president, Laurent Gbagbo, former prime minister and official in the International Monetary Fund, Alassane Ouattara, and Henri Konan Bedi, the former president overthrown in the 1999 coup.
يأمل الناخبون في أن يوحد هذا الاقتراع البلد الذي انقسم على نفسه.
The voters hope this election will unite the country, which was divided by a bloody civil war following a failed military coup in 2002.
لكن آمال الناخبين في انتخابات سريعة وحاسمة قد تتبدد سريعا.
But the voters' wish for a quick and decisive election may soon be shattered. It is unlikely any of the candidates will overwhelmingly triumph in the first round of results to be announced this Wednesday. This means it will be necessary to conduct a runoff election in late November. Ahmed Maha, BBC.
في تنزانيا تتواصل عمليات فرز أصوات الناخبين في الانتخابات الرئاسية التي أجريت أمس وتعد.
In Tanzania, the vote count continues in yesterday's presidential election. The election is considered the most exciting thing to happen in this African country since it adopted the multi-party system in the 1990s. Incumbent President Jakaya Kikwete expects a sweeping victory like the one he had in the 2005 elections. However, this time Kikwete faces tough competition from opponent Wilbrod Slaa, whose campaign included fighting corruption in the election.
قال مراقبون دوليون إن نسبة المشاركة كانت ضعيفة في استفتاء أجري.
International political observers said the turnout was weak yesterday for the Niger referendum on whether or not to adopt a new constitution. The results of the referendum are expected to be officially announced this coming Thursday. The new constitution was proposed by military leaders who took control through a coup in February.
A number of Iranian nationals are being held in U.S. prisons. We have the story of an Iranian single mother of two who reveals mistreatment at the hands of U.S. authorities. Let's take a look.
Iran has long brought up that its nationals are being arrested or abducted by the U.S. or its agents across the world. These are ordinary people who the U.S. accuses of different crimes in order to pressure the Iranian government.
چند نفر از ایرانی‌ها رو از کشورهای مختلف، یعنی ایرانی رفته مثلا تایلند، مثلا رفته گرجستان یا جای دیگه، اینا اومدن ریختن و دستگیرش کردن بردن تو آمریکا، یا ایرانی تو آمریکا بوده گفتن آقا شما رفتی مثلا خواستی یه جنسی رو به ایران صادر کنی، گرفتن زندانی و ببر بیار مثلا.
The story of Shahram Amiri, the Iranian researcher kidnapped in Saudi Arabia while on a pilgrimage, is well documented. Press TV now brings you the story of Shahzad Mir Qoli Khan, the single mother of two arrested in the U.S. back in 2007. She has two teenage daughters who haven't seen their mom for 3 years. The U.S. government accuses her ex-husband of trying to export night vision goggles to Iran from Austria. She was detained and sentenced in his absence.
This is happening in a country, in a land that claims to be the sole protector of human rights in the world.
In an exclusive interview from prison, she told us about the mistreatment she has endured.
Awful. It's awful. I was mistreated horribly.
She also says the mistreatment at the hands of U.S. authorities is getting worse. Shahzad says the U.S. is using her as bait in order to get to her ex-husband.
United States government invite me for governmental business to America. From the airport, they put me in handcuffs, they took me to the prison, and they started to torture me in every possible way, more especially, mentally. They torture you mentally horribly. To become a spy and work for them to turn in my ex-husband.
Her daughters met with U.S. national Sarah Shord before she left Tehran. Shord was arrested along with 2 other Americans for illegally crossing the border into Iran from Iraq. She was released on bail in September in a humanitarian gesture due to an illness. That kind of humanitarian mindset on the part of the U.S. government seems to be absent in the case of Shahzad. This as she keeps languishing in a prison in the U.S. thousands of miles away from her children.
Surprisingly, Washington has escalated its political rhetoric in Lebanon. The UN Security Council issued a special report accusing Syria, Iran, and Hezbollah of attempting to control Lebanon. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Jeffrey Feltman sounded the alarm bells, warning that Washington's allies are on the verge of collapse in Lebanon. What we are witnessing is Washington waging a provocative and premeditated political war to help rally support for its allies in the region. It seems that some are not too pleased with the latest efforts by Syria and Saudi Arabia to diffuse tension in Lebanon. Is Washington starting its policy of spreading chaos in the region through venues such as the International Court of Justice again?
صعدت الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية هجومها على سوريا بشكل مفاجئ.
The U.S. has surprisingly escalated its political attacks on Syria.
U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, read a statement issued by the U.S. government accusing Damascus of increasingly smuggling sophisticated weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Rice singled out Syria for displaying flagrant disregard for Lebanon's sovereignty, unity, and political independence, especially after Damascus issued arrest warrants for senior Lebanese officials. Rice delivered the statement outside the UN Security Council, where members held a special session to discuss the implementation of Resolution 1559. A copy of the report was circulated by the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. At the same time, Rice read the statement at the UN. The statement accused Syria, Iran, and Hezbollah of seeking to destabilize Lebanon and the region by stirring sectarian tension in a bid to cling to their authority in the region. It's an attempt by Washington to rally support for its allies against Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah. The statement urged Lebanon's friends and neighbors to play a constructive role in the region by providing honest support for the Lebanese government, saying it's the only way to preserve the interests of the Lebanese people and the region as a whole. The U.S. report coincided with a statement issued by UN Secretary General's Special Envoy to Lebanon, Terje Roed Larsen, who said the situation inside Lebanon poses serious threats to world security and stability. In response, the Syrian envoy to the UN Security Council strongly dismissed the U.S. allegations, pointing out that the UN Secretary General's report concluded that no weapons smuggling had taken place across the Syrian-Lebanon border. Observers believe the UN report supports the allegations cited by U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Jeffrey Feltman and the messages of incitement he circulated in Arab capitals, including Riyadh and Beirut.
In the wake of the controversy over anti-Israel positions taken by the Synod of Middle East Bishops, Arab Christian affairs expert Wadia Abu Nasser shared his views on the status of Christians in the Middle East with IBA's Ariel Russia. He also addressed Archbishop Cyril Boutros' claim that the concept of a promised land cannot be used to justify the return of the Jews to Israel and the displacement of Palestinians.
There is a very sensitive issue, which is the theological debate. What would be, or what is the role of the Jewish people after the arrival of Jesus Christ on earth? For Christians, especially for Catholics and Orthodox and traditional churches, we believe that Jewish people are called to become, in terms of faith, to follow the footsteps of Jesus. Since they are not, there is no anymore chosen people of God. You know, the New Jerusalem is the church. So therefore, it is a theological debate that I don't want to enter in, but I do believe that such kind of theological debates should be kept aside a little bit, because when we talk about theology, we talk black and white. It is difficult to reach an agreement. It is either you accept my view or accept yours. Therefore, I do believe that it is better to put aside theological arguments, and especially because the Israeli-Arab conflict, it's mainly political and not really religious.
Are Christian Arabs, in your opinion, not suffering from repression at the hands of Muslims in the region?
I doubt that there is a kind of systematic Muslim persecution. I believe that Christians are victims of the instability in the Middle East. Instability brings hatred, brings radicalization, brings all sorts of problems. We are witnessing as Christians different kind of problems with Muslims, but one has to be frank, you know, with Jews also. In Israel, there are also problems for Christians, you know. To get a visa for a priest, it is a nightmare. You know, many Christians, I can tell you, in the Galilee don't dare even to think about getting married with a Christian from Bethlehem because of family unification problems. So there are different challenges for Christians in the Middle East, also with growing radicalization amongst Muslims, also growing radicalization. See what Rabbi Ovadia Yosef just said some days ago. So I believe that instability is the main enemy, not only of Christians, but of all peace seekers people in the Middle East. Christians in Israel are underrepresented. There is no while in Jordan, Syria, and even the Palestinian Authority, there is a quota kept for Christians in the parliament, in the cabinet. We don't hear about a Christian minister here in Israel. We don't hear that a quota exists for Christians in the parliament. And by the way, also in terms of numbers, Christians immigrate more from Israel than from Jordan. So where the regimes in Syria and Jordan are quite hugging the minorities. So I don't believe that, okay, I'm not coming to say that Israel is relatively, if you compare it to Iraq or Lebanon, it is better, but everything should be taken in proportion.
Minister of Awqaf Dr. Mahmoud Hamdi Zakzouk and Governor of Gharbiya Governorate Mr. Abdul Hamid Shanawi attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the renovation and development project on Syed al-Badawi Mosque in the city of Tanta. The project included expanding the internal and external parts of the mosque.
The project also covered the library, the mosque square, the columns, and the domes. The total cost of the project was about 25 million Egyptian pounds.
As part of Awqaf Ministry's plan to revive, renew, and rebuild the mosques in the country, the project to develop and modernize the ancient mosque Syed Ahmed al-Badawi in Tanta began in 2005 with cooperation from the Ministries of Housing and Awqaf. The project included floor restoration, foundation reinforcement, repairing columns and covering them with a layer of marble, expanding the square in front of the mosque, and painting the adjacent buildings with vibrant colors.
Last time this mosque was renovated was in 1975. 30 years later, in 2005, we started redeveloping it. It cost 25 million Egyptian pounds this time. The mosque was renovated and redeveloped in every aspect.
The renovation project also covered the library, bathrooms, lighting, chandeliers, and furniture to suit the mosque's high religious value. Thousands of people every day, millions every year, come to this mosque to pray and visit the great Qutb shrine.
The project lasted 5 years. It was completed with the highest quality of work. Because the Syed al-Badawi Mosque has historic religious and spiritual value, not only in the Gharbiya province, but also in other parts of the Republic, and maybe the whole Arab nation.
We added many things, the most prominent of which is the reinforcement of the mosque's foundation. It is built to last a very long time, God willing. God willing, worshippers who come to the mosque will know it is a safe mosque to pray in, and they will be subject to no disruption. The installation was completely finished to serve the worshippers.
The redevelopment of religious shrines for the faithful servants of God will help promote religious tourism and is aimed at promoting the Islamic cultural legacies.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible from support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news. Read our blog. Get transcripts of past shows and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.